Welcome to The Rally. This podcast includes commentary and conversations about issues relevant to clinical psychology. It is intended to educate, entertain, and enlighten, and is not a substitute for actual mental health treatment. Individuals who share personally here choose willingly to tell their stories to benefit you, the listener. All other references to clinical situations are altered or limited to protect confidentiality. For more specific questions or help with a personal situation, please consult a local mental health professional. Therapy, mental health, real life. This is Psych Rally with Los Angeles-based clinical psychologist Dr. Martin Hsia.
All right, welcome back. This is episode 10 of Psych Rally. All right, a very special guest joins us today on Psych Rally. I prefaced her at the end of episode 9 as someone I've known literally my whole life. She was the flower girl at my own parents' wedding. I was not in attendance, but you were. I suppose it's debatable whether I was there or not, but
I don't think so.
I wasn't there. Okay. This is my first cousin. Her name's Felita.
Hello.
Thanks for taking the time to chat with me today.
You're welcome.
Yeah, a number of reasons why she's very special to me, not just because she's my cousin and I've known her for a long time, as I said, but I was an only child and I grew up in a very sort of quiet suburban area, and by most counts I had a very good childhood, but one of the highlights growing up for me was when my 3 older cousins would come over, Felita and her 2 younger sisters, who were about between 10 and 15 years older than me, would come over and bring lots of big 80s hair and singing and dancing and laughing, and I got a lot of attention, and those were always pleasant memories, and I treasure those. And subsequently, later on, before I even started graduate school and anything that I'm doing now as a psychologist, Felita was one of the people that introduced me to the Cloud and Townsend books, which really just blew my mind. Those guys were awesome, And I feel like you and I sort of carry the mantle of introspection and mental health in our family.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so a couple reasons why I thought, I asked Felita to come on here and share. Thank you for doing this again, by the way. Is just because, she's overcome a lot of things in her life and been through a lot of unique struggles, but really done a lot of work on herself in therapy and more recently in landmark education programs and landmark forum, and is just very good about being open and articulate about her own experiences. Right? Being public about your own faux pas and thoughts and struggles has never been your problem.
Nope.
And just one other quick note, and I'll hand it over to you, is, I think when we get together as a family, some of the things that recurring jokes we always talk about is how even though your mother and my father are siblings and only a year apart, how different our childhood experiences were.
Gosh.
And you have a very special perspective always for me personally, because you were older than me and you would come to my house and you know what my childhood was like, but you saw it through older eyes and through an outsider's perspective. And that's very valuable to me, especially being an only child where you don't have another frame of reference. You don't share that with anyone else, so that's very valuable to me. And but I think what's most interesting, and the place to start, is how the point of contrast, even though we're so closely related, how different your childhood was. So maybe, So maybe we could start there. Share a little bit about what childhood was like for you, your early years.
Well, I would say it's almost completely opposite of yours, Martin. Martin grew up in a 2-family, 2 parents at home, just like that stability and the nurture and, just the regularity of like good food.
I had structure and manners and routine. And
and we didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
My parents split up when I was 7 and my sisters were 2 and 6 years old. So we were really young, and this is back in the 70s. We lived in Venice, California before it was cool and hip. And it was kind of like this, gangster area, not good and not safe, and
not the Venice people know.
No,
not
not
Venice
the
Beach,
hipster.
and yeah, right.
yeah, like where it's super cool and everybody's got beards and whatever, But
They might have had beards for other reasons.
yeah, so I grew up in the 70s, like already feeling really awkward. My name, Felita, is not normal. My sister's names rhymed with mine, Felita, Melita, Arita, and we had our Chinese names, Ching, Ting, and Ying. And I mean, everybody laughs every single time we say that, and we totally get it. So we already felt different, even though we're born in America, born in California, yada, yada, yada. And then my mom divorced my dad when we were so young, and it just like our whole lives were shattered, And back in those days, nobody talked about anything. Nobody explained what's going to happen. And you just sort of, as a child, just were like, shuffled here, shuffled there, and you don't understand anything. So
even more so in the Chinese American community. Right?
They go, oh, no. Don't talk about that.
You just don't.
Oh yeah, you just don't. It's just not done.
Yeah.
And if you try to say something, I would try to say that to your dad, and he'd be like, oh, no.
Shut that down.
Just shut it down.
Okay.
It's okay. Although I have to say, your mom was there, and I only knew this because I asked my second sister, who's like my twin. She's a year younger than me. I go, well, what happened when we left Daddy? Because my mom divorced my dad, and the 3 girls went with our mom. And apparently we flew to Taiwan, and I don't have any personal memory of that myself because I literally blocked out most of my childhood. But my middle sister was like my memory. So I said, Ting, what was I doing? And anyways, long story short, she said that it was your mom who took my mother and my sisters and I to the airport. So we were all there leaving my father. And
Ooh.
I don't remember any of that.
Wow.
But my sister says that she looked at Daddy, and he was like looking at her with tears in his eyes, pleading for her to stay with him. And she's looking back and forth at my dad and at all of us walking out the door. And she's like, I need my mommy and my sisters.
Oh,
and then
boy.
she left, and then my dad's like alone, and
Wow, that's heavy.
right?
Yeah. Okay.
Super fun.
Yeah. Well, you talked about how you blocked some things out,
Yeah.
which I know have sort of maybe come back to you later through the assistance of other perspectives and therapy and stuff. What did you block out? What did you recall? And why do you think you blocked those things out?
Well, now I know with like 30 years of therapy under my belt that
I hope that helps.
oh my gosh,
We'll
I'm
get there, yeah.
a massive believer in therapy. I didn't even know such a thing was possible, to have a safe space where somebody could hear you and hold those spaces with you and for you. And so the next time you go, they will connect those pieces that were so fragmented. I blocked out my childhood because it was too painful for me to be with. I didn't have the ability to be with it. So I checked out, and I just survived. And I was, I was a parentified oldest child. I, spoke for my sisters and my mother. I was, the strong one on the outside, and that was what was expected of me. But internally, I was like a 7-year-old child trying to be strong and trying to be a parent. I don't know what I was doing. I was just in survival mode.
Yeah. Obviously the divorce was a significant incident.
Mm-hmm.
But what other things thrust you into feeling like you were in that role of having to be, I forget how you said it, protector or the
Parentified
the
child.
parentified spokesperson.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it is like, my immigrant mother's upbringing too, and how she went through, her childhood and didn't have the mothering and fathering that she needed. And she's, my mom's amazing. She's like this fierce 4'10", like dynamo that can go anywhere, do anything.
Fierce and 4'10". You don't always
Yeah.
put those two together.
Totally, and everybody loves my mom. She is great, and being, a girls and their moms, we have something there, and, I love her. And like, I think I grew up a lot feeling resentful that she didn't parent me the way I wanted her to. I think it's pretty textbook. We're like, oh, woulda, coulda, shoulda. So, my experience of my mother is that while she's really strong in some ways, like growing up in childhood, like she was pretty absent emotionally. She was in survivor mode. And she did what she had to do to raise 3 little girls, under the age of 7 and under. In
that's
the 70s,
no small feat either way.
In the 70s,
Right.
with basically no skills. I mean, she grew up in China, so back in the day, her parents, they had servants and things, so she didn't have to deal with that until she was married and then divorced. So she just went through a huge learning arc herself. Went through all sorts of drama and trauma.
We have some Joy Luck Club history on that side of the family, but
yeah.
So anyways, we won't need to get into all that, but yeah.
Yeah, suffice it to say, my mom came, bearing lots of baggage, and what I know as a mother now is whatever we don't go through ourselves, we just bring to our children. We don't mean to. We want the best for them, but we just do. And so my mom did the best she could and all that. And there were some pretty huge gaps from my mom and my dad and myself. And so through therapy, I've been through so many different therapists from the places I've lived. And they've all been like my heroes, the ones who were always there for me and who spoke to me and who heard me and literally mothered and fathered me. So I had the object permanence and I had all the connections that I didn't have.
That's a Psych 101 word there, object permanence.
Yeah.
So before we talk about your journey into therapy, right, is there reasons why you use the word reparenting and having people be a stable, safe figure for you? I mean, your mother, my aunt, as you said, she did the best she could, but there was a feeling of a lot of things being lacking.
So one of the big things that I probably grappled with my whole life, and I'm 51 now, is the enmeshment I've had with my mother. I'm the oldest of 3. I'm, the strong one in the family, and my mom, through most of our life, she has a role. She gets to be the weak one, the helpless one, the needy one. And because there's the opposite need, I stepped in to fill those gaps. I think it's just intuitive. And
having 2 younger sisters.
I'm the oldest.
Yeah,
Dad's not around. Yeah. We have no man in the family. My mom's acting weak, so I have to act strong. Mm-hmm. Like I just took that on. And one of the kind of, I have a lot of images when I kind of go through therapy is, we distinguished this in therapy with Sharon back in, maybe 10, 15 years ago and continue to do so. But like one of the images I have is me being caught in this dust storm, and I'm like, oh my God, the dust storm! And I'm like literally like flying, spinning around like in crazy chaos, and I'm like, I'm just like literally swept up and lost, and I can't think, I can't see, I don't know anything. Everything is just pure chaos. And that's moments that these things would have to happen often in how I experienced my childhood. I'd be literally caught in my dust storm, and I'd be like, oh my God, what just happened? And I'd be like laying there afterwards like, and so what I learned to do in my childhood was to escape and to pretend. So then from the dust storm, I would like disappear down my little rabbit hole like Alice in Wonderland. And I would go to my little happy pretend world where it felt safe. It was quiet, it was safe, it didn't have like craziness swirling around me and yelling, and
no dust
you, like I could be like, oh. And I remember I could see this like, little fake fireplace with, like fake fire and my little stuffed animals around it and a cozy little sofa and my little tea, my pretend tea, and it made me feel safe in those moments. So, a lot of my childhood was like getting caught up in dust storms and acting strong and pretending and faking it and then escaping and running away and just like blurred. Like my life felt like a big fog. I really didn't understand, and I'm kind of segueing here, is like I really didn't understand who I was. I had no sense of being present because I didn't have any modeling for that. My mom was not present. My dad was not present.
Do you remember the first time that you went to that pretend safe place? Or when you started?
I mean, I'd probably been doing it since I was really young. Like one of my earliest childhood memories is when I was about 5 years old, and I'm in my bottom bunk bed and I have hair in my eyes, and the house is really quiet, and my dad's sleeping because he worked the night shift at Norm's, and my sisters and my mom all were gone. And I was home alone, and I was really angry and resentful because I think I was sick. I think I had chicken pox or I don't know, something. And I was home by myself, and they all got to go to Lion Country Safari with Auntie Bobby without me. And I was so upset. And then I remember sitting there all by myself and going, I don't know if I'm alive. I don't know if I'm alive. So I'm going to remember this moment for the rest of my life because I don't know if I'm living right now.
You literally had that thought.
Yeah.
Is this...
Yeah, and I was 5 or something, really young.
Wow.
I know it was before 7 because my parents divorced when I was 7, so it was like younger.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about sort of going to Taiwan post-divorce, and sort of that moment and being at the airport. How else did the divorce impact you?
We were so fragmented. I mean, even before the divorce, I would say that our family was like just in survival mode. And so with the divorce, then, we're with our mom, and then she didn't tell our dad where we were for, months, maybe a year.
Wow.
And when he was finally allowed to come see us, it's difficult when a child has to kind of choose between parents. Like we shouldn't have to do that.
No.
And we didn't have any emotional support in you can love mommy and daddy,
Didn't get that message.
No, I didn't get the message like, oh, daddy's wrong and bad. And well, I guess you should go, but we didn't have like that. It was very fragmented, very dichotomous,
It wasn't a sort of thought through.
No.
And here's how we're going to approach it.
There was no sitting us down and talking about, what's happening and how it's going to be. And we just were like, huh? We're in Taiwan. Huh? We're in
what the heck just happened?
Huh? Wait, where's daddy? Everything was just confusion.
Yeah. Fireplace and the tea set sounds appealing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, some people are fortunate to never have to go through something like this. Or if their parents do separate or divorce, they do it with as much care and intentionality as possible. But that wasn't the case here.
Yeah.
You kind of had to make sense of it yourself and have had to over a long period of time.
Yeah.
Right? So what is that, when you go through, your late childhood years and middle school, which is tough enough as it is, but you're still sorting all this out. What was that like?
Well, middle school is all about belonging and fitting in. And, I was one of those nerdy types with the glasses and no sense of style.
I remember you with glasses, but nerdy, I could never put that on you.
I was so nerdy. I had those metal frame octagonal glasses and no sense of style, like just none. I didn't, my mom dresses refugee style, so I didn't know how to put clothes together. I didn't know how to do anything. And, I didn't know how to fashion my hair or my clothes or anything. We didn't have YouTube back then.
No, definitely not.
Oh my gosh, these kids.
You
know
had Charlie's
so much
Angels
now.
and stuff later on.
Oh yeah, we had Charlie's Angels and Brady Bunch and I Dream of Jeannie as our role models, sort of. But
So they helped you piece together
Barbie doll,
some
but they're
cohesive
all white.
fashion sense.
They're all blonde and white, and we were like little Chinese nerdy little kids. So we're like, what the heck? Our only Asian role model was like Bruce Lee.
He didn't help you very much.
No, not really. So growing up middle school years, very awkward, very uncomfortable. I remember thinking to myself that I'm probably going to be, at least I'm smart. I'm not popular. I'm not pretty. I'm just smart. Okay.
And
I was kind of
through.
resigned to that, because I didn't know that there was any other possibility. I felt so awkward and so gawky and pretty much alone.
And this is not in a heavily Chinese area or Asian area where you could, at least there's some people that look like me here, yeah?
No, we were like, one of like 5 people in the school, and the other Asians, is my sister and I were the Chinese ones, and there are a couple other like Vietnamese or, our Navy-based people, but then it was us with our weird names. Being Chinese and American, they're like, education is the way to go. So we always knew we would have to go to college, which was probably really foreign to most, like 99% of the kids that we, were in school with in Oxnard and Port Hueneme. Like a lot of them, I shouldn't say 99%, a lot of them, they didn't, once high school was done, they married whatever, person, and they had babies right away. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's
what
not
you did
where
up there.
I was at. That's just what you did. We always knew we'd go live with our dad and move to LA and go to college. So that's one great thing. I would say that for me, going through high school, honestly, I was a pretty good girl. I didn't get into drugs or smoking or anything like that. I was, I did my homework and, didn't raise a ruckus at school, or we were at church. I was in choir. I was like, a lead singer and all that stuff. But there was, a huge gap for me in terms of like, having that support, and even coaching and mentoring and like, what are you going to do? How are you going to be? And I had a little bit of that in my musical life. My choir teacher took me under her wing, and she was the pianist and also a vocalist. So she always put me in a lot of spaces that I got to practice, and share. So that was great. But, there's also huge parts of me that were like needy. So, with boys and stuff, like I didn't have my first boyfriend until I was a senior in high school. And, it was fun, but like I didn't know what I was doing. And,
most high school seniors have it all figured out.
Yeah, it's like,
so I think that was just you.
Right? And it's like fun, but you're still like, I don't know who I am. And
sure.
And you just kind of go with things, and then you discover your body and you discover stuff, and then you do stuff, and you're like, So like I was saying, God, I wish I had the emotional safety and the guidance where somebody said, hey, I love you no matter what you do. And if you do this, be smart about it. And here's some stuff. But I was very, because I grew up Christian, and I was very like black or white, you can't do this. And so I never allowed myself certain permissions. And therefore I got into actually a lot of trouble because I didn't do certain things. So I know I'm speaking vaguely, but maybe I should just be blunt and be straightforward and be like, segue into college. And I was at USC in a sorority. It was amazing. I discovered all these Asian guys, and I was like, wow, Asian guys are hot. All right. Because I didn't really grow up with that. And
I say that to myself every morning.
You should.
When I look in the mirror.
Yeah. But like, one of the things that is always part of me now is that I got pregnant 4 times when I was in college, and 4 times I didn't keep them. And it's a sad and tragic piece of my life that I have grappled with and agonized over, and also, completed, meaning like I went through the whole process, and like, I thank God for his grace.
It was a process.
It was a process,
yeah.
Let me tell you. Yeah.
This was the first time that you sought out therapy? Was in college?
Yeah, when I was 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what led you to do that? And what did you know about therapy at that time? And what was your impression?
I had heard Christian radio before, like psychology, and I was like, gosh, they sound so good. Like they're talking about stuff that I want to know more about. And I was always fascinated. Gosh, I don't even know when it started, but I was always fascinated with like, why am I the way I am? I always wanted to know, why am I the way I am? Because my sisters are nothing like me. We are so different, but why am I the way I am? And I was always wanting to know and always wanted to discover. So when the opportunity came to get counseling, I was like, yeah.
Sign me up.
Sign me up.
No
sign me
stigma
up.
there.
I'm a student. Give me like the sliding scale. Awesome. And I went in and I sat down, and it was like this Japanese gal, I think it was Asian American Christian Counseling in Torrance, and I think she said, so tell me about you. And then I just started crying. I just burst into tears.
No words, just tears.
I was like, I don't even know where to start. My whole life, like I know on the outside it looks like I'm fine. But inside parts of me had been so shattered. Yeah. So having somebody who could hear me and not judge or condemn was just like amazing. It was like, thank you.
People don't always realize how differently someone can feel on the inside from how they look on the outside.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I was hooked. I was like, therapy is awesome. Because you don't have to understand everything. You could just be.
Yeah.
And it was like probably my first entree into simply being. I don't have to be strong. I don't have to be a certain way. I don't have to have the answers. I don't have to know. I could just be me. And with all my fears and anxieties and insecurities and worries or, condemnations of myself and all that, I could just be in a space where I was literally held emotionally. And that was just like a whole new, journey for me.
And even after so many years and other experiences, still thinking about the first experience with that, clearly it's emotional. There was something so significant about it.
Yeah, and I never really went back and looked at that first moment, but, it was.
Yeah. So you attended regular therapy throughout college and beyond, or?
I think it was a little sporadic. I mean, I was a sorority girl, so I had no time.
You had time for other things.
Oh, yeah. But, I don't remember how often I went to therapy, but I do remember it was like a godsend. And then, for whatever reason, like I didn't go anymore when I probably needed to most, because once I graduated USC, that was another pivotal moment.
Why?
Because then I was kicked out of my dad's house and I had nowhere to go. And that's how I moved to San Francisco.
I see. I never knew that, actually.
Yeah.
Well, I knew you moved, but...
yeah. I mean, my dad didn't say, I kick you out of the house, but I had been with my then boyfriend, helping him move into his apartment in San Francisco for law school. And I had been really estranged with my dad and my stepmom, basically my whole family, through college, because they perceive me as being, oh, you're so selfish. You only care about yourself. You don't care about the family, because I didn't want to work at my dad's Subway sandwich store. And, while I was in college, and I was for a couple of years, but I also was not, A, getting paid. And two, it was like so much time. How am I supposed to go to college and individuate and find who I am, and also, work full time and not get paid, and also commute, because I didn't live in the dorms. I lived at home in Palos Verdes and commuted all the way down the 110 to USC.
Oh my gosh.
And went to work at Torrance. And then after I got that job, I quit my dad's place and I had a job in Santa Monica. So I did this giant triangle.
Sure.
In my little Toyota Corolla,
It's a good thing LA is not known for traffic either. I'm sure that doesn't
that was easy.
make it easier. Right. I remember that Subway sandwich shop too, by the way.
Yeah, God. I was the worst Subway sandwich maker ever. I'd be like, what do you want? Okay, fine. Here.
Really?
It was bad.
Really?
And I did not care.
Poor bedside manner. Mm-hmm. You're like, I ain't getting paid. This is like my dad's sweatshop here.
That's right, it was.
Can you talk about how the arc of your faith and spirituality through this period and post-college years?
Yeah. So I grew up, Christian, but it always felt very hypocritical because, we're a divorced family, and
Christians don't divorce.
Yeah, there were all these black and white, good and bad, right and wrong.
The worst thing you could do is get a divorce.
Oh my God! I mean, we already felt wrong. Just felt like not good. And so for me, I always had that faith, but I just didn't really understand it. It wasn't really personal totally until my mid-20s, when I had moved to San Francisco. And then Gene and I broke up, and it was really bad. It was my psychological death moment when I was 24. And because, I put everything on Gene, but it really, poor guy, it wasn't him. It was everything that was leading up to that point. It was, how estranged I felt from my mom and my dad and my stepmother and my half-brother and my two sisters. It just kind of opened up Pandora's box. And underlying for me, faith has always been like this safe, this like, this bigger than me space. And I remember, praying like I'd never prayed before and just like begging and pleading. I remember praying. I had moved out of San Francisco where I was living with Gene and had been in this tiny little apartment in Palo Alto. And I was like, God, I just wanted community. And all these other people emerged and became like a source of love and community and family for me. I got really involved in church and I didn't know that churches, there's so many different types of churches, and I didn't know that there was like healing prayer, and I didn't know any of that.
This was different from what the kind of church community you grew up with.
Yeah, like I had grown up, like in Oxnard First Baptist Church, where it's very, pomp and circumstance. And then there are these, smaller churches, or like Vineyard, where it's like, people are like, oh, it's charismatic, and I was like, what's that, and I was scared of it. And then I realized, oh, it's just, people, there's more, I don't know,
it's expressive.
It's,
there's the Holy Spirit kind of emphasis, which is different.
Yeah.
And maybe not everyone's flavor.
Right, exactly. So I kind of like delved around into various, churches, and I was just seeking healing and wholeness. And
did you get it?
Yeah, I got so much. I felt like that was like a whole, like, probably 2, 3, 4 years of like super intense, like, like drinking it in and like, healing those broken parts of me. And I was also in therapy at the same time. I would drive from Palo Alto to Santa Cruz through the mountains and stuff. And
that's a hike, yeah.
And my therapist, I still remember one of these pivotal moments in therapy there with her is, I had felt so shattered. My life was so fragmented, so shattered. My heart was shattered. And I never knew that, like, Jesus cared about my heart. Like, I had no idea. I was like, oh, he just wants me to be a good Christian and do the right things and read the Bible and go to church on Sunday. It was this very, kind of a young idea of what, being a Christian is about, even though I was in my 20s. And then when I was in therapy, I had this picture of my shattered heart, like in a million pieces, like in the sand. And like Christ was like a magnet, just like gently going over the sand and finding all those tiny little pieces, those fragments of my heart, and pulling it all together and healing my whole heart. And I was like, what? I just couldn't believe that. Like, it was like my Christianity, my spirituality, like, had opened up into a whole new dimension I never knew was possible.
This was so different from what faith meant for you growing up.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like, it became so real for me. And I was like, wow. So to this day, whether I go to church every Sunday or not or whatever, it's like my faith is so deep in my spirit, in my soul, like it's there. It just is.
This is the second time you mentioned a powerful image that came to you that sort of illustrated something very significant. When images come, do they come to you in therapy or just while reflecting, through someone else, through dreams? Like, how do those images come to you?
It is in being with other people, in reflecting with other people. I have so many images that I could probably write like a little book.
Maybe you should.
But yeah, it's generally, well, I would say, yeah. I mean, it's just one way that I experience my life.
And something sticks with you from it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Subsequently, you got married.
Yes. So I was in
Forgot about that part.
So God works in mysterious ways. I'm an LA girl, and I moved to San Francisco because I was, quote, emotionally kicked out of my dad's house in Palos Verdes, and
Quote.
quote. Well, he never said it, but I felt kicked out. And
Okay.
so I get to San Francisco, and then Jeannie and I break up, and I move to Palo Alto, which is before then it was just Stanford community and all that stuff. And I met this guy, Dave, in downtown Palo Alto with a bunch of friends, and we started dating. And I was like this hardcore Christian at the time where I was like, nope, I can't date non-Christians. So I dated him for a little bit, and I was like, I can't date you. And then I'm like, bye. And then, I just kept going through life. And then I was in like my late 20s, and I was like, I have to get married. Like there was this weird ticking, where like I didn't, ladies, you might understand this, but
Clock was ticking.
Yeah. And there was just like feeling like I have to get married. And I had re-met Dave again, and good Chinese Stanford kid, boy, and
Textbook
on paper. Oh yeah, A+. And so I was with him, and then we got married at Stanford. We actually before that we worked at this weird little startup called Yahoo. And
it's a small name, no one's ever heard of it.
Yeah, right. That was back when it first started, and so we got in early days at this internet company that got big, and like that was one of those like serendipitous things where I never knew I was going to be able to come into that kind of experience or that opportunity. And yeah, so at the end of 99, I'm married and I'm pregnant, and working like startup mentality, and that's just not sustainable when you're pregnant. So then I was able to quit, and they had this huge party for me, which was awesome. I was like, a Yahoo alumni at that time, and like retiring to have my baby.
After all those hard years working with a startup.
But it is, startup 1 year in startup years is like 10 years.
Oof,
it is insane.
Boy.
It's like everything is fertile and amazing, and you're just like, anything you say, you could just create. It's really this wondrous
blazing
time.
the trail.
Yeah, it was really fun and exhausting and exhilarating all at the same time. And
you had your own startup project.
Yeah, I had my own. I was incubating my own. And then having two people like my then husband and I, both in the same company, but within our own like departments, our own realms, pretty much like creating a lot of stuff. We just stay really, really busy and really active. And we didn't, in retrospect, I look back at this, we really didn't cultivate our relationship, and we had our baby, and like, gosh, when you have a child, it is no joke.
I've heard.
Yeah, right. And, and there's a lot of undistinguished things that I now know, right? Where I didn't know that I had all these fantasies about marriage, and someday my prince will come, and I will never be lonely ever again, and he will save me. Like, I just had all these
Thanks,
childhood.
Disney.
Yeah, thank you. Like, seriously. And, it was just like such a rude awakening when those things were not real. And I all my own childhood baggage that I still, with all the therapy I had, I still didn't necessarily have the communication tools or the ways of being tools to have more grace for my poor now ex-husband,
Do you think that... Do you relate that sort of fantasy or what you envisioned marriage to be to the, sort of the image of the safe place? Or
yeah. Like I thought, all of a sudden I'm married. I've got this ring on my finger. We had this huge wedding at Stanford with like 1 million people or whatever, and like now I'm safe forever.
It's done. It's all good from here.
It's done. Like live happily ever after.
Right.
Like complete fantasy, right?
Sure.
Oh my gosh. And like life continues to happen, and what do you mean happy ever after? You create it, you work at it, you connect, you take time, you build it in. Now I know, but at those days I was like, a nursing mother with, TMI, I'm sorry, but like I'm like bursting, you know, like, and you know, I was so unhappy, and I probably was going through postpartum. I was very depressed, very unhappy, but I didn't know it. I just thought I was just overwhelmed by having this little baby, you know, and I wanted more support. I had physical support. I had, you know, nannies and night nannies and maids and housekeepers and cooks, and I had all that, you know, house manager, like the most ridiculous. I had tons of staff.
Butlers and footmen and upstairs and downstairs.
I kind of felt like that, but you know, it's like, but honestly, I was just like this lonely little girl trying to figure out how to how to take care of my own little girl.
I know I was going to say,
right?
You had a little girl, literally.
I had a little girl, and I'm, you know, and so I was in overwhelm, and I don't know why I wasn't back in therapy, and I probably could have needed it. I needed it even more then, but you know, you just don't think about those things. And when I was just so unhappy, and I was lashing out at that poor Dave, and you know, I went too far. He went too far with things we said, and he was just done. I was done, and I didn't really want to be done, but I was done, and went through the divorce, and it was like another death for me. I mean, he actually hired like a collaborative divorce therapist for us, and I was in the lobby of her office, like hyperventilating on the ground. That's how I was not okay with this. And thank God I had my girlfriend Julie waiting for me in the car, and I was like, oh boy, you know, like I was like, I can't even breathe.
And this is at least in a collaborative divorce therapist office.
Can you imagine?
Have been even worse.
I could not even imagine the poor people that go through like court systems. It is heinous. You know, and so I went through that fun process, not really, but you know, I was pretty checked out emotionally, and then I found my new therapist, because I had moved back to LA at this point, and I was like, I need to be, you know, with my mom and my dad and my stepmom and my sisters. I need to be with my people, my family, and as much as I had family up north, I needed my family, and they were amazing. They actually helped me raise my daughter, and I found my therapist, and she was like, hallelujah, you know, like I was like, because as you mentioned, Cloud and Townsend, like I feel like they parented me in a lot of ways too, from listening to a lot of their work and reading their books, and even going to like things that they would have at Mariners Church. They would have Monday night solutions, and it was like amazing.
Those are the things you gave me some of their, well, it was not that long ago, but I mean they were on cassette at that time. This is probably the dying days of cassettes. We had a bunch of Cloud and Townsend cassette Monday Night Solution stuff, but there was great stuff on there.
So good, so great. And so they had their own therapy clinic, and I was like, I need to go there. And then they had Sharon available for me, and you know, I don't know if it's the first moment, but I was with her from 2001, you know, and it's never. I wouldn't say that I stopped seeing her. I haven't seen her in maybe about 6 months to a year, because I have so much of her still inside of me, like so much of her nurture, her care, her care. I mean, it's priceless. You know, yes, you pay for therapy, but you can't pay for the immense energy and space that she provided me. Going through the divorce, being a single mother, you know, nursing my child, being completely overwhelmed, still needing my mother and my father, my stepmother, and then like going crazy. You know, even as they helped me, I would go from Huntington Beach with my dad and stepmom in the house that I bought them to the house that I bought my mom in Marina Del Rey, and I'd go back and forth depending on how crazy I felt.
Wow.
But I would always go see my therapist, and I saw her 3 times a week. And the first probably 2 years, I was like that, like, like I needed
that to hold it together. Huh?
I needed, she was like my rock, you know.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Wow, it's interesting you talk about how going back, right? You had an earlier experience or several earlier experiences in therapy that were really powerful and really significant, and they were helpful in the way that they could be at that time. And yet, as you said, then you get to this place in life where, I thought this is it, this is good, and now I've got different types of life crises and deaths and losses to deal with, and other things to deal with at another point in time. And how therapy was helpful for that too. Yeah.
Beyond helpful. Like, helpful is not even like a strong enough word. Like, she was my lifeline. You know, like, she was like Jesus with skin on for me. She was like, I couldn't hold it together without having her. And she provided that for me. You know, like, I could call her if I needed to, and I wouldn't ever abuse that, you know, and there were only a few times when I did. But she really was this comforting, nurturing, empowering space for me. It was almost like, you know, I was like a baby myself, and like literally being healed, you know, so that I could grow up and be an adult, a functioning adult, and parent my own child. And thank God, I'm so grateful.
Was there a particular incident or moment, interaction that you remember that particularly left an impact or exemplified that?
Well,
presence?
she's who we discovered the dust storms with. You know, like that was pivotal for me to be like, I never knew that. I literally could see this huge desert canyon that was very desolate and chaotic looking, and kind of looks like the aftermath of war. And there's like, you know, overturned things, and it just looks very like dry and arid and kind of And my first image is me as like a little 7-year-old girl with my hair in my face, and I'm kneeling down with my face down, and my two sisters, like I'm holding my arms around both of them. And that's my first image. And it's like, you know, be me feeling like I have to take care of my siblings in this desolate space. Like, we don't have any resource. We don't know where to find anything. And then the second one is me being in there and caught up in these crazy dust storms where I'm like literally like out of my head, and I'm like, ah. And then the third image is me going down that rabbit hole into my pretend safe fantasy place. And then my fourth one is actually having done enough work in that space to emerge up into above the canyon and walking now above it into like the new horizon. And my image is if me and, you know, Jesus / Sharon / you know, another person who, like, I'm not alone. Like, thank God I'm not alone anymore, you know?
No.
Yeah.
So imagery was powerful. Having the constant, available, caring, stable presence was helpful. And over time, it wasn't just holding you together. It starts to be also, more than that?
Yeah.
Healing, growth inspiring.
Yeah, like I feel like she mothered and fathered me so much into like from being like a little girl, teenager, to, you know, now a functioning adult that doesn't have to go into pretend and, you know, survival, although that's of course instinctual, but like I have so much more resource now, and I have, you know, like Psych 101, object permanence. Like I literally needed the nurturing in my spirit. I know I did. I needed that mothering and that fathering that was always there. Because one of the images I had also, like to kind of go a little deeper, is, you know, as an infant, like when we look into a mother's eyes, we mirror that, right? We mirror mother.
Yep.
And so I would look in my mother's eyes as an infant, and all I saw was fear and anxiety. And so I mirrored that, and I took that on in my being. And like most of my childhood was fear and anxiety, and like this constant hum of, you know, like that constant hum. It's not a fun way to live. It's not a fun way to grow up.
But that feeling started to not be as dominant.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know when that moment of the buzzing in my ear kind of just like stopped. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have peace.
Yeah.
I didn't know what peace was like. I didn't know, you know, I can go from not just surviving, but to literally into thriving mode and creation. And
yeah. One of the things that I recall, I guess maybe around this period or in the last 5-10 years, there was a period where you talked a lot about living life without fear, and which is great. On you know, you hear that in lots of other motivational places and posters, but I mean, it became a motto for you, I remember. So talk about where you picked that up.
Wow. So that is probably coming from the past few years, maybe 5-6 years, where I discovered Landmark Worldwide, which is personal development, self-development courses. And I found out through, I don't remember how I found out about the Landmark Forum. People were telling me about it, and I was like, yeah, sure, okay, whatever. And anyways, for me, I have been constantly doing some of the courses of Landmark.
Well, why don't you just say a little bit more for someone who might not know what Landmark Education is? Yeah.
It's a series of educational courses. It is global, so it's around the world. And we have a center, a Los Angeles Landmark Center right here in Culver City, where you go and you can sign up for a course. And they're all about transformational learning. So Landmark focuses on what we don't know. Do you have a question about that, Martin?
No, I'm chewing on that, yes.
So, therapy, we deal with what's submerged and what's still inside and all the unprocessed emotions and the feelings, and that's excellent, and I definitely needed that. And Landmark, it's not like an either or. For me, I am a huge advocate of therapy and a huge advocate of doing personal development and personal work to always learn and grow. And so when I discovered Landmark work, I was like, wow, this is a way to actually put my money where my mouth is. Like, this is where I actually can really be out in the world, living my life and practicing that with safety, where you could go and try things. And if you fail, so what? I think how do I describe this? Like the friends that I've made in the work of Landmark, like we were in the team management and leadership program together for 2 years, is where I met my boyfriend, who is my man. I love him, and we create life together, and it's incredible. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but we create it. And when we get all pissy and cranky and gross and whatever, we can call each other on our stuff and have enough resource to love each other through that. And that's how it is with this huge group of friends that we have cultivated over time of doing the work. And so when you said, is it living life without fear? It's not like I don't have fear, of course I have fear, but it's like,
that's comforting to me.
Right. What if I could live my life as if I had no fear? What would I do? What would I even allow my mind to think about if I had no fear? Because it's unfathomable for me to think about that when I was a child, because all we did was live in fear. So for me, just even thinking about it was like taking the lid off and then doing the work. For me, one of my first things I did when somebody said, what would you do if you had no fear? I was like, I would travel more. And my daughter was, I think, maybe 7 at the time, and I was scared to travel overseas. I was like, no, what if something happens? I just lived in a lot of what if, and honestly, it's not, for me, I was like, you know what, I'm going to choose to live yes, I could do this. Why not? And I, created structures where my daughter was 100% taken care of and beyond. We had, my mom and my sisters and our nanny who's full-time and, everything. We had so much support around my daughter, and we were going to, FaceTime or Skype every single day. And I got to go to Paris and London, and I got to see, one of our uncles while he was still alive. And I got to go and explore places, and I was gone for 10 days. And it was amazing. It was amazing for me to leave my daughter, who was part of my being, right? And be like, I can go do this. And it was magical.
It was a breakthrough moment, to use a Landmark Forum term, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I don't know if Landmark's the only place that says breakthroughs, but yes, we tend to have that in the language.
Right. Yes. Wait, so Landmark is very interesting to me because, I'm a psychologist, I'm a therapist, and but there's some controversy around Landmark, which, some of the things that you read or hear is, that they can be very, kind of pushy about inviting other people, and there's certainly very intense, long days of training with, reputably sort of strict policies on bringing in food or water breaks. Some people have compared it to Scientology or said it's cult-like, or there's a brainwashing feel to it, or that they're selling a quick fix. Those are some of the criticisms out there.
Okay.
And I don't know exactly, who is. I mean, it's just things that I've read, and but what would you say to that as someone who's been involved with Landmark and taken a number of their courses over the last few years?
Well, what I love is that, you take whatever you want, whenever you want. There's no you have to do this or you're going to, I don't know.
That hasn't been your experience.
Oh my gosh, not even close. Not at all.
Okay.
I think that might be the first layer, because if you Google anything and you want to find it, you'll find it.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So the Landmark Forum is their first course, and it's a 3-day, 1-night workshop, and it's all about really engaging in what we don't know. And I remember my course advisor, I forgot what they call it, their leader. He's basically a coach, and he's standing in front of the room, and he's like, put his arms out. He's like, folks, I'm just holding up the mirror. So in other words, Landmark, especially the first course, is about seeing what's there and the blind spots that we can't see ourselves. And I was like, what blind spots? I have no blind spots. But of course, I knew I had blind spots. And actually, what's so ironic is, I have blind spots, but I kind of know they're there. And I have hints all along the way. And, everybody around me sees my blind spots, but I don't see them. And so when you're in a room with, these people, we're all like a bunch of blind spots, and we're all seeing each other. We're like, wow, there's such a sense of, there's absolute safety, right? What's in the room stays in the room, right?
Yeah.
And confidentiality. And, but there's such space to see, and there's a safety to look, instead of deny and run away and pretend it didn't happen, which was my whole life, right? And so that's why, I had some huge breakthroughs, but I didn't know that they were breakthroughs at the time. One of my biggest ones, should I go into that?
Yeah, sure.
One of my biggest things that I got from the Landmark Forum was, we talk about something happens, and then you draw a big circle. That's something that happened. So for me, what happened was my parents got divorced. Okay. So the second circle, what did I make that mean?
Sure.
So what happened was my parents got divorced, and what I made it mean, but I didn't know I made it mean that.
That was your reality. It wasn't a version or a story.
It was absolutely integrated. This is real. So this is the truth. That was my truth. But I collapsed it all. I had glommed it all together and meshed it and didn't know I did that. So the Landmark Forum helped to separate it out, have distinctions around it. And I was like, oh, what I made it mean. What do you mean I made it mean something? And
you mean there's another way?
Right, there's another layer to look at. It was fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing was I made it mean that I don't matter. And I had no idea. Because if you look at the outside of my life, everybody's like, oh, you're so talented. You're such a blah, 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 blah. Of course I matter. Out of my sisters, I was like Marsha Brady, And I was always the star or whatever in the family. So they're like, are you crazy? You don't matter. But that's how I felt inside. That was my truth, And so when I saw that, and I saw how I had become like a detective looking for where I don't matter my whole life, I started seeing that I was doing that. And then secondly, seeing where I made these stories up. I made it mean with my dad, I don't matter to him because he's always busy and he's always working. And then I looked at him wait, Daddy was the one that would always say, you girls are all that matters to me. I do everything for you. And I'm like, oh, I forgot that.
You could pick and choose without realizing what was fitting the narrative, yeah?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it was massive. And to this day, I actually had conversations with my ex-husband, and I saw how I made, I made up all these stories about how I made him, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I am so sorry. I didn't know it's not an excuse. I just want to apologize for the things I did and said to you. I think you're an amazing person, an amazing man, an amazing husband. And I'm so happy that we have shared life together and we have this amazing daughter together and we get a co-parent together. Mm-hmm. And that all came from doing the Landmark Forum.
Yeah.
Things that never would have happened.
Really helped you break open. It sounds like, well, maybe I'll share it because you invited me once to the Landmark Forum and I attended one. And
the introduction.
The introduction, yeah. And I experienced it as it's good psychology.
Oh.
It is. It's a good message. It's a good psychology. I think maybe this responds to the criticism piece too. Is it feels like church because there's kind of someone up there talking, and there's can be a lot of emotion, and a lot of people really responding to what the person's saying and wanting other people to hear the message. I think at that level. Maybe some people have a negative reaction to that, but there is this culture or emphasis on wanting people to really see things from another point of view, and kind of be a little bit confrontational about that. Not necessarily in an abrasive way, perhaps, but it can it can be public because they want people to share that, and the speaker can kind of call someone on their lenses. Or their crap, and so there's that aspect of it, and maybe that's some of the benefit you got too, is having a breakthrough, or what's the Landmark term is a new realm of possibility, right? Of seeing things from another point of view, and not realizing that your reality or your meaning that you've put on a life experience is not the only way that you can see it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's where you find the value of therapy and personal development, like Landmark courses, because it's a hand-in-hand experience, I think. So the Landmark Forum is about the group process, and it's like you start really, you walk in the room with all these strangers, and you're like, who are these people? And everybody kind of puts on a front. It's just what we do, right? Looking good and not looking bad. It's all we want to do, right? Go through life, and then one by one, as people go up that want to share. And they have a question or they have a response, then you start seeing, you start falling in love with everybody in the room. You're like, oh my gosh, they're not so different. They might dress different and look different, but oh my gosh, we're all the same. We all have the same fears and anxieties and insecurities or questions, and you just start opening up to to people that you normally, for me, that normally I'd be like, well, I don't know those kind of people. Or, just having more empathy and compassion for others as well as ourselves.
When you can see past the facade and people are really just bearing their souls at a vulnerable way. Oh, it's a powerful environment.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is.
Can you talk about, having, again, been in therapy for a long time, as well as, more recently being involved with Landmark education and Landmark programs, there's probably a lot of overlap between what you've gotten out of them, and yet it's at least a very different format. But how do you see the two of them fitting together? Are there any pieces that are at odds? Are there any ways that you would recommend, or people or issues for whom you'd recommend therapy versus Landmark or one or the other?
I feel like with therapy, it's a one-on-one, experience, and it's usually a regular, weekly time where you get to focus on something, that is really, really intimate for you, and you get to have that time just alone with you and a therapist, and it's wondrous, and it's I feel necessary.
The one-on-one aspect of it is unique.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And with Landmark, it's not therapy. I mean, it might have good psychology, which, is true. You can't have bad psychology. That would be terrible.
Hope not.
But it's not meant to be therapy, and it's meant to be, just growth and development and looking at what we don't know. They call it transformational education. So, it's great. Or no, maybe it's another word they call it. I don't want to. I'm not a spokesperson. I don't know.
Okay.
Call them.
You're a consumer. Yeah.
But I'm a consumer. I'm simply a consumer. And for me, it's when I want to have more growth and development in a group setting. And I'm like, oh, I want to go and take a course or do a seminar, or, oh gosh, I've always been wanting to take those communications courses. They're only 2 days. They're just a short weekend. And oh my gosh. And I took those, by the way, those communications courses and blew my mind. Amazing. So amazing. Those tools that I got from those courses, I will forever be utilizing them. It's that useful, that good, that real, that visceral. And from those 2 courses, I took the 2-year team management and leadership program that I mentioned earlier. And, my whole life is no longer the same because I get to be playing my life. I get to be in my life and live my life, not just surviving it. But, surviving is one thing, but literally living and choosing and being intentional and creating a future that I want to live into. Yeah. That's what Landmark's about, you know. You talked about, what was that last thing? The realm.
A new realm of personal possibility.
A new realm
or something
of possibility.
Like
yeah, we don't know what we don't know. I lived with so much fear and anxiety, most of my life. And, some of my family still do. And no matter what I say, they're still going to be there until they get it for themselves. But I'm just thrilled that I can live a new realm of possibility.
And
that has
reality,
integrity.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, that's what I've been doing.
But it's been a long journey and a lot of work.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of intention.
Yeah.
Intention and attention, I should say, in multiple formats.
Yeah.
To have you in this place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah, I think that it's not a either or. I think that you can do both. Absolutely. I've met many therapists who are doing Landmark courses, and there's lots to choose from. It's kind of like you get a whole curriculum and get to choose. Once you take the Landmark form, that's the initial one, and then you get to take any other course pretty much that you want to.
You got to eat the appetizer before you can choose different entrees.
Or it's like taking Psych 101, and then you could take the other courses, or,
cool.
Your GEs.
For someone listening to this conversation, anything else, kind of a take-home message or things that you would really like to leave someone with?
Yeah, I think that what I'd like to say to anyone out there is you're not alone. You really aren't alone, and you can reach out and find people that can connect to who you are and that can support you in living your life the way you want to live it. And that's what I want to leave people with, that there's hope. Right?
And you've been able to find that by really fighting for it.
Fighting for it, doing the work of it.
Yeah. Having the right people around you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's been a very, it's a long journey. There's a lot of people that, I call it chunky soup of life. You go through the chunky soup of life and you just keep on going.
Thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that was my cousin, Felita. We lost a little bit of audio at the end there, but hopefully her story and struggles and courage came across. We were reflecting afterwards. When was the last time that we had the chance to just sit down and talk, the two of us, so openly? And the answer was maybe never. So I was glad to be able to do that together with her. I imagine it might feel a little weird to hear two family members having such a vulnerable conversation like this and share it so publicly. And there were a few other conversations that needed to be had within the family before it felt right enough to publish what we discussed here. But as we said, my dear cousin has never been shy about these kinds of things. I'm very grateful she could discuss her journey here. Another quick take home for me, we make our own meanings about our life experiences, and that happens whether or not we realize it in the moment. And sometimes those meanings don't work or hold up as well as we might have once thought. And it can take some really deep, hard searching and perhaps some help really to go through the process of interpreting our own lives in a way that works better. And that can sometimes be a tough pill to swallow. As always, you can support this podcast by subscribing, rating, and reviewing Psych Rally on iTunes. And in addition, at no extra cost to you, you can do your routine Amazon.com shopping via any of the book links mentioned on the website, www.psychrallypodcast.com. Coming up next in episode 11, my friend and colleague, Dr. Joe Dilley, and I will be discussing the battle parents around the world are fighting to wrestle their kids' attention from their screens and smartphones and video games, and how we can help reconnect and re-engage with the next generations. See you there, and thanks for listening in to Psych Rally.